In Learning Objective B, we're going to talk about how to make an appropriate window for a graph on a calculator. So good graphs have a few key things. The first thing is that the axes are labeled appropriately and the scale is shown. So if you are transferring a graph, for example, onto your paper, put your tick marks, label your axes. If you're counting other than by ones, then label that. The second component is that the window that you chose shows the characteristic shape of the graph. So, for example, let's say we had a parabola whose vertex was at the origin. You would want to make sure that your window captures the vertex for sure, because that is a key component of a parabola. And some of the nice features where it's rising on the right and rising on the left here. So quadrant 1 and quadrant 2 is very important. Now quadrant 3 and 4, there's no graph activity, so we probably could cut some of that off. Another thing is the intercepts should be shown. Now on here, our intercept is shown. This is an x-intercept, and it happens to be the y-intercept also. But for example, what if we had this graph where we had something as this nature? What they're saying here is make sure that you can see all three of these x-intercepts and this y-intercept. Key characteristics, you see this maximum point and this minimum point. So really give a good, reasonable picture. So let's take a look at this example. They want us to graph g of x equals the absolute value of x plus 5 all minus 10. Now for our graphing calculator purposes, g of x is just y equals, and find an appropriate window. So to do the graphing, we're going to click on y equals, and up here we're going to type the absolute value. Now to find the absolute value, where you're going to have to go is you're going to have to select this math button. So select math, and it's going to default you to this part. Use your right arrow and actually go over to the word num. This right here, ABS, is absolute value. So scroll down to 1 and hit enter, and it will actually populate your absolute value, either symbols or the word ABS in there. Inside the brackets, type x plus 25, arrow out to the right, and then do minus 10. Now let's just reset our window for certain. I'm not sure what it's at. If you click zoom, and standard is number 6. This will give you the window of positive 10 to negative 10 for both the x and the y axis. Now we know what the parent function of absolute value should look like. It's a V shape that goes to the origin. So I'm looking for the V shape, and I need to make sure to have a good window. I have the vertex, and I have both good representation for the right and the left side of the V. So I could imagine that this graph is probably, if this is one side of it, maybe it looks something like that. So to help me determine the window, I'm kind of imagining where the shape would look like. And then if you look at it, maybe we go from the x's here to about way over to this side. So if this is 10, maybe I'm looking at the x's where I need to go over to 20 or 30 or 40. Now what I chose to do is I'm adjusting my window. To adjust your window, what you're going to do is hit window, and this screen's going to come up. Let me show you what I chose. For the x's on the negative side, I chose to go all the way over to negative 50. Now remember, I want to keep some of the y-axis here, so I didn't cut it off so I can't see it. So I said, give me the x's at a positive 10. So I still did keep this side of the window. Now for the height of it, I'm not quite sure. So what I did do is I hit graph on my x-axis movement first to see how it looked. And I went back, and it wasn't the best. I wanted a little more y height. So I went back to window. And you're going to notice on the window for the y's, I said have my minimum be at negative 15 and my maximum be at 20. Keep in mind this is 10 to negative 10. So I brought this up all the way to 20, and I brought this down to negative 15. This x scale and the y scale means how you want your tick marks to count. So I just want them to count by ones. So then I hit graph again, and I got this window right here. To me, that seemed appropriate. Now, not everyone's going to have the exact same window. We just want a decent looking window. So I would say that it is reasonable that if we did the x-axis from negative 50 to 10, the y from negative 15 to 20, we can get a reasonable window. Okay, let's look at another one. Find a good window for g of x equals the square root of x minus 8 plus 5. Again, this is just y equals. So in the graphing calculator, I'm going to click the y equals button. In the y equals prompt, I'm just going to type the square root of x minus 8. Make sure to arrow out on the right so we can be out of the square root symbol, and then do plus 5. When I hit graph on that, I got this picture here. Again, I know the parent function of the square root looks something like this. So I'm really missing a good portion of this graph. So what seems reasonable to me is to get rid of a lot of this dead space, but I want to keep the axes. So I'm going to maybe just cut off over here. But I need a lot more of the x over here. So what I did, if you look at what I programmed for my new coordinates, again, I just went to Window and I got this set up. I said have my x's go to -5 on the low end and up to 30 on the high end. Now, for the y's, the negative y's, there's really no graph there, so I did minimize that. I had the y's go from -4 up and all the way up to 20. Then I hit graph and I got this picture. To me, this is reasonable. I see the start of the graph, I see the axes, and a nice shape of it.